June 17th meeting of Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission to order. Can we give our names, starting with Commissioner Neely?
Doug Neely.
Graham Peterson.
Brian Shaw.
Alice Norris, Commissioner.
Don Slack, Commissioner.
Nancy Walters.
Jim Nacita, Commissioner.
Daphne West, Commissioner.
Can we go on around the room and get everybody to...
I'm Larry Patterson, City Manager.
Lloyd Purdy from downtown Oregon City.
Carrie Moore. City Mom, Oregon City.
Colin Miner, the Oregon.
Mark Foley.
Okay.
And the late Rob Crocker.
So wait. He looks pretty good for being the latest.
And you're who?
Not too bad.
Rob Crocker,
Commissioner.
City Commissioner. Urban Renewal Commissioner.
Okay.
I don't even.
Do we have any citizens' comments tonight? Anything turned in? No.
Mr. Chair, too, I just
yeah.
want to indicate that on Item 4J, we'll be taking that off the agenda this evening. I actually had a call that somebody may be interested in that.
Wait, in the
Okay.
1810?
Yeah. So we'll try to work that out first before we take that issue up.
One other thing, Ms. Hyde, would you add the comments we received from Commissioner Smith to the record?
I certainly will.
Do we have those?
I don't have them.
They should. They're at your. They came by email, but they're also a hard copy on your table.
I would like to take a minute to read it because I wasn't able to download it.
We'll take a minute then.
Okay.
Okay.
Which map?
Are we ready? Commissioner Neely, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Future agenda items. Okay, we'll move on. Discussion items. Just 4A, minutes of the May 6th Urban Renewal Commission.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
There's a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second from Ms. Walters. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Project update, Amtrak Phase 2 and parking lot. Ms. Krushauer?
Good evening, Chair Slack and Urban Renewal Commissioners. I wanted to give you an update. I came to your meeting, I guess it was in March now. It seems like it was just yesterday, but in March I came to your meeting to give you a little update on what had been going on with the Amtrak station project. And at that point, you had authorized us to continue on with developing some agreements and to complete some structural design work and to complete an appraisal for the project. And I wanted to come back and give you another update to make sure you're staying informed as we're making progress on this project. I also wanted to, I provided in the staff report a little bit of history about the project because I realized that a number of your commissioners may not have been around back in 2000 and 2004 and et cetera, when we were applying for different funding sources to help us complete Phase 2 of the project. And I thought that might be helpful in just providing the background, a little more knowledge for you all, so you'd understand why we are where we are at today. So in short, we did get an appraisal done, and the appraised value was $230,000. At this point, it looks as though the seller is basically committed that that's a good price for them, and so I guess I would not be particularly inclined to further negotiate that value. It's kind of hard to go down from your appraised value. And then I also wanted to let you know that agreements had been drafted by the seller for the purchase of the depot and for creating a construction document for their company to construct the parking lot and move the depot. And then there also part of that agreement was the option to purchase one of our properties, and that is the GrowCo site, which is at 1743 Washington Street. And that's why I wanted to make sure I provided your replacement map. The first map that I included in the packet with our newfangled system, it looks like we're doing Google Earth in some kind of weird dimension, so I thought it may be helpful if you had a map that showed the proportions of the properties a little bit better. The other thing that we have done is given David Evans and Associates the authorization to proceed on finalizing the structural redesign, or completing the structural design for the foundation for the depot building. And we believe that the agreements have been reviewed by our city attorney, and we passed them back over to the seller, which is Historic Properties / F&F Structures. And then they're now going to be reviewing our comments, and we'll do a little bit of back and forth on the legal agreements. The other thing that we've been working with is with the tenants that are in the building now, assuring that if we want them to, that we can transfer those leases to the city or to the Urban Renewal Commission. We'll have to find out legally what we probably want that to be with the city, and do that in a way that we could continue to make some income on that building in the interim while we're deciding what we want to do later with the building. And so for that, I've actually asked for your direction in terms of, I was going to recommend a 2-year lease, and then with 1-year options to continue the lease. That way, 2 years isn't very long, and we could also have options to terminate the lease within the 2 years. But I think that gives some certainty to the tenant, and also gives us quite a bit of certainty, rather than going into a 5-year lease or longer. This would give us enough time to work through what the commission might see for future use of that building, even before it becomes a train station. I mean, it's just that, I think those are good terms. So that would be the one thing I would like some direction on. And then certainly direction on continuing to proceed with the preparation of the agreements. Our thought would be to bring those to you, I think it was at your second meeting in July, for review.
Commissioner Neely?
Am I right in that the 230,000 is the specific price that we know about at this point? Is that correct?
That's what the appraised value was for the building.
And you said that Historic Properties was agreeable to
Yes.
that. But the others, we haven't done any bidding in terms of moving or anything of that nature.
No, we did some estimates early on, Commissioner, and now that once we finalized the structural plans, and we also had to redo some of the landscape plans, and we've asked them to now start preparing some firm cost estimates, and we've asked them to get competitive bidding on some of the larger items in the contract.
Do you remember offhand the square footage of the building?
What was it, Nancy?
I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
And I don't have the appraisal document with me either.
Just a couple of things, I think, of a historic note, and if I'm wrong, perhaps Mr. Foley can correct me. I believe that building actually was moved from Oregon State to the industrial areas of Portland at one point.
From
And-
Oregon City.
From Oregon City, yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I think there was, I believe that the intention of somebody was to get rid of it. It failed to meet the usefulness, and that Mr. Fowler of Historic Properties found out about it. He realized the historic value of it, and he had it moved back to Oregon City. Is that correct? Yeah. And so it was a historic resource that could have well been lost and wasn't. And I think it's our interest to preserve it in such a way that's consistent with the original use, and I think that's what we're talking about.
Commissioner
I would
West?
agree with that.
So tonight, we have a bid, or is this kind of what we're agreeing to? So $230,000 for paying the appraised price, and then I did not realize F&S Structures moved buildings. I thought maybe we would be having a Terry Emmert, so they are moving the building? Is that what we're
We would be
approving?
contracting with them to move the building. I don't know if they're going to use a subcontractor or not at this time.
Okay, and then we're going to move it, but presently, then we're going to, you're asking if we'll do 2-year leases with a 1-year option, but you're not asking us to fix it up any urban renewal money for at this point. It's just going to sit there as an office building for a few years till, what's the tipping point when we decide to make it a
That would be up to the commission to decide. So it's basically what we're asking for is to provide us direction to continue working on the project, continue to finalize the agreements for the commission's review in July, and otherwise the work we've been done was already authorized by the commission. And then if we're going to be drafting some new leases, we would like sort of a head nod on the lease, the terms of the lease.
And then this 900,000, or that we have 900,000 that's from Metro that we can use to fund this?
That's correct.
So we aren't really
Federal.
using our urban renewal.
Federal funds.
Well, we would be using, it would be $600,000. If we have a budget of $1.5 million.
Correct.
And $900,000 is from Metro, and the rest is from the urban renewal.
But it's 230 for the building. It doesn't cost 500,000 to move it a block, does it?
Well, it includes building the parking lot and building the platform for the building and finishing it. There's quite a bit of work.
And then, as I'm understanding, then the property option here with 1743, that's not in this deal. So tonight we're going to talk about this, and that's at another point.
That's right. They proposed a certain amount to buy the option, and then we had an appraisal done on that property recently, within the last 6 months, and we would be incorporating that value when we negotiate that option to purchase with them.
Commissioner Norris?
Actually, these are federal funds that are
That's
allocated
true.
through Metro, and that's why we didn't get them the first 3 times we applied, is because it's very, very competitive. So it's pretty nice to be able to have these. I think all seems in order. I think if you want to talk about the leases for the tenants, I don't care about how many years. I care about the termination, the ability to, if we have another use, to be able to terminate in a timely manner while giving
Okay.
them a fair way to get out of their lease.
Commissioner Crocker?
So one question I have is, I realize the historic significance of the depot, but what if we do come back and it's a lot more money to move it and like build for it rather than building a new structure that doesn't have to be renovated? I mean, how much of a premium are we willing to pay? I guess we should wait till we get the numbers on how much it would cost to move and stuff, but I guess I want to raise that question as to, if there is a
Yeah.
premium, how much are we willing to spend to...
Well, we had done construction cost estimates ourselves throughout the years as we applied for these funds, and we would want to use those as a guidance for whatever decision we ask you for agreement on or not. So I would suggest that A, we have a budget, and B, we have construction estimates that we've been using throughout the years, and we use those as a guideline. And when we bring it back to you, you use that for your own information as well.
Commissioner West?
I'm kind of wondering why we're moving it, but why we aren't going ahead with maybe taking part of the building and renovating it so that it would be a train station, and keeping half for leases or for the present businesses. I'm wondering why we're waiting on that. What's the issue there? So we're going to spend all this money to move it and not be able to use it.
The inside will still be, it's very good office space right now. It's usable. And I guess from my perspective, to be able to be making money on the entire building is probably a good thing in the interim, rather than adding additional costs to this project at this time. But that's not my decision to make.
So it's just going to be there looking cute and historic, but really not usable
It'll be used as office space.
as office space, but
Employment.
not as a train
Right.
depot.
No.
But a profitable office space.
Right.
Well, maybe just one
Employment.
office could be a...
Yeah.
Later, okay.
Commissioner Neely?
Well, I think once we secure possession of the property, I think we have to talk about how that facility is going to be used. But we don't have a plan in hand, and just in general consideration of the tenants there, I think that the two-year lease is a good idea. I'm going to bring up actually the question that Commissioner Smith raised in his memo. We have the historic properties themselves that submitted a draft agreement in terms of the relocation. And is there a reason we don't take the preparation of the site and the relocation as a bidding, sending out for a bid?
I haven't read this either, Commissioner Neely. I'm sorry.
It's his 4B in the second paragraph.
Oh, I think we talked about this quite a bit previously. There's a lot of benefit for having whoever owns the building moves the building, not only in terms of knowing the structure and knowing the tenants and keeping everybody happy during a rather tumultuous event, but also in terms of if you're doing the parking lot and the site preparation for the building, there's a lot of logistics that are far easier if you have one contractor involved. And I agree with that. I think that's really the reason why we're entertaining this thought. And what we have discussed, though, with F&F structures or historic properties, whatever we want to call them tonight, that we want to make sure that we're getting competitive bids. We're not going to coat this cost because of one person is involved. I mean, I've been very clear with Mr. Foley and Mr. Fowler from day one that these are public dollars. We need to be essentially following public contracting laws, realizing we would get an exemption if we don't go out for public bid. But we expect to be transparent as to which bid items they've gotten 3 cost estimates and have them be the larger bids, subcontract some of the larger items, and we'll be bringing that detail back to you.
Okay. My question is,
But
if
the idea is not to,
yeah,
is
I
the idea
understand.
is to be competitive.
The question is, how are we going to make the determine it's a competitive bid?
We'll review it. We'll be asking them to provide documentation for if they're getting 3 quotes from different subcontractors. And, I mean, we can work directly with them even in providing the documentation and, no, guys, you weren't in coercion on this, were you? I mean, we expect there to be that kind of transparency.
Another question I'm going to raise, I mentioned at the last City Commission meeting that there's a serious consideration of having a rail system that goes initially, I think, to Salem, but I think a rapid rail system that will be an urban rail system that would go to the east, to the west area, as opposed to this area. And I think everybody should be aware of that. That may affect whether Amtrak has a long-term future here. And I'm not sure what that means in terms of our investment at this point. Having said that, I'm going to support it because it's probably going to be a while before you get that kind of a system built out. But I think there are some lobbying points that we need to bring forward in terms of the any urban rail system that currently goes through Oregon City and its future might be impacted. I think that we have to think very hard of what the justification would be to keep it here. I can think of some, but
Right, and I've seen those conversations, and Mr. Patterson and I are going to meet with one of the representatives that's looking at that, and it is a whole new plan that the state hasn't looked at, the West Coast hasn't looked at. It has tremendous obstacles on the west side as well, and certainly to skirt Clackamas County completely would be a loss for our county. But I think those conversations are in the infant stage, and we'd want to certainly be very involved in them as they evolve.
Commissioner DeCita, did you have a?
First comment is I've expressed it's repetitive now, my concerns about this commission not being provided information upon which to make decisions. This is another example. There are draft agreements on this deal that we have not been provided. At least on the Cove, we were given a draft of the disposition and development agreement to review before making a decision. There are comments that our own city attorney has provided on this draft agreement that we also have not been provided with. And on that basis alone, I won't support this. I will echo Commissioner Smith's concerns. I agree with all of them. I don't think that we should be selling property that the people of Oregon City own to a favored party. We have a fiduciary to the city and its taxpayers to get the best deal on things. I think we should, if we do sell property like this, it should be at an auction where we get the highest price or the best use. The development of this property should take place consistent with our urban renewal plan. And I don't know if our urban renewal plan would even allow us to actually dispose of property if selling such property is not part of the plan. Our city attorneys here, maybe Mr. Kabizman could give us some wisdom on that.
Sure. Bill Kabizman. I've got the urban renewal statute here, but certainly to the extent, I guess the general purpose of urban renewal is not for the urban renewal agency to hold property for the long term, but eventually to sell it. I haven't looked at the plan and exactly what the plan is for the particular property that you're talking about, but my assumption of the plan documents is eventually that property would be sold. Exactly what purposes and whether it's consistent with those purposes, I don't know without looking at the plan.
I am not supportive of this as it stands. I would agree to continue it, but if there's a motion to approve this as presented, I'll be a no vote.
I don't think there was a request for any motion at all tonight. It was only information. Unless I misunderstood.
And direction on the leases.
Right. Commissioner Walters.
To what extent have the parties already agreed to exchange the property, or at least the first right of purchase?
We've drafted agreements. It's been in discussion for a number of years, Commissioner, and that's one of the reasons why we had an appraisal done previously. We also used that appraisal to give us some ideas of what property values were for some right-of-way acquisition for the Highway 213 projects. Kind of had a little dual purpose there. But given that, we thought it would be good to kind of start gearing up for understanding what the values are. And the one thing I might mention in terms of how much is that property worth, it's the way it doesn't have access except for through the existing Amtrak driveway. And I think to be honest with you, even perhaps in developing some of the land use planning documents, not that they were part of the comprehensive plan, but in some of the shadow platting we've been doing down there, to consolidate that property with the ones in front of it from a development standpoint really makes sense. I mean, if you want to get a productive development out of that location, consolidating those parcels is the best way to do it. and it happens that Mr. Fowler owns the parcels in the front. So it kind of makes sense, if you're going to consolidate those parcels, you might want to check with the guy that owns the front part first. So that's what, to be honest with you, that's probably what's been the most obvious driving factor for the conversation so far.
Okay, I think Commissioner Neely was next.
Yeah, I'd pose the question, was this part of the purchase of the Stimson lumberyard, or do you know? The Urban Renewal Agency bought it?
No, this was a separate purchase. This was not part of the Stimson purchase.
Okay.
GrowCo was always a separate
All right.
parcel.
Commissioner West?
Well, I'm kind of piggybacking on Doug's, so I don't know the original history of why that property was even purchased. How long has it been there? 10 years, 5 years? I don't know. 20?
Gosh, I'm going to actually have to plead ignorance on this. That
Just curious.
parcel was purchased about maybe a year or so after I started working here, and I think it was seen as an opportunity for the Urban Renewal Commission, given the fact that they bought the Stimson site, that all of that property could be used for
Something.
economic development in that area, right, to carry out the plan.
Commissioner Neely?
The only thing I was going to say is, of course, the development that occurs there is going to have to be consistent with the zoning that we develop.
Right. Yes. It's regional
And
center.
I presume, depending on the size and so forth, it's going to probably go through the Planning Commission. As it's developed, it's going to go through the normal processes.
Commissioner Crocker, you.
Are we looking for a motion just to, no?
Just direction.
Oh, so you don't need a motion to look for direction on the leases?
Well, the commission report says recommended action, and then
No,
in
that's the
parentheses,
form.
motion.
Okay, well, then I don't have any comments. I think there's plenty for us to discuss. I don't know if this isn't really looking for a vote, so I don't.
Okay.
Do we need to beat a dead horse
Let's
there?
move on.
Well, I guess, did you get the information, feedback you needed on the leases?
I got it from some of the commissioners.
You can add me to that list. I think a 2-year with an
with
easy out
good
clause for us if we want to get out.
clauses. And
Yeah.
we've done those kind of clauses with most of the other leases down in that area, so that we're
I
familiar
had one
with that.
question about whether, I assume there are leases from those existing tenants now.
Yes, there are.
And those probably call for some termination of that in order to move the property, or?
They do.
Okay.
They've been working with that as
Commissioner
well.
Lee?
Those are
There's two things. One, the 2-year doesn't concern me because, first of all, there's going to be some inconvenience to the people that are there. I am sure that whoever moves is going to probably try to have the minimum imposition in terms of the time that they can't occupy those offices as possible, but that's going to be a tremendous inconvenience. So I guess I don't have any trouble with the 2-year agreement, and of course, the ability to extend on a year-by-year basis is okay. My statement would be, though, well within that 2-year period, we have serious discussions of how we want that station to function. Because now it's not functioning to, I think what our intent is, to serve as a train station. People have to wait outside for the train at this time, and I'm sure if the volume increases, there will be a basis of actually selling tickets in Oregon City as opposed to just paying the conductor as you get on the train. And those, I think we have to build into this the notion that within this 2-year period, we're going to actually do some planning for the use of that facility.
and consider when the market is right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We need to move along. We've got a lot of going on
gonna be
tonight.
a-
Are there any other comments that anybody needs to make?
Well, I ditto and move forward.
Let's move forward.
Yep.
C, purchasing procedures. Mr. Patterson.
Turn this over to Mr. Sebastian.
Good evening, Commissioners. I believe was a memo from about 2 weeks ago, so it's distributed. The question was raised a while ago about is the Urban Renewal Commission a separate purchasing entity or not? And I believe the statutes support the idea that it is a separate purchasing entity. And the end result of that is that under the statutes, the Urban Renewal Commission is currently required to go through the Attorney General's model code, which has certain requirements that it imposes for purchasing. And as I understand the discussion that you want to have tonight is what are the options as far as how to go about doing that. One option would be to turn over purchasing authority to the City Commission as a local contract review board for the city. Another is to adopt the Urban Renewal Commission's own set of purchasing guidelines. A third option is for the Urban Renewal Commission to continue to operate as a purchasing authority, but to adopt the city's code, which has some minor modifications from the Attorney General's model rules. For the most part, it does follow the model rules, but there are some differences. And there may be some other options as well. There are other cities or urban renewal commissions that have adopted different types of purchasing processes. And I guess I'm here to answer questions you might have about what sort of process you want to follow, what ideas you have, and where the commission wants to go on this.
Commissioner Walters.
Thank you. My main concern is that I'm pretty familiar with the model rules of purchasing, and I'm concerned that whatever we do, it's important that the commissioners understand their responsibilities, and that whatever we do is consistent with those guidelines. So, I guess from my standpoint, I would like to see the city commission do it because it's a duplication of authority, and it would alleviate at least half of the members here of that responsibility.
Commissioner Norris?
No, I'm just going to,
Yeah, that's
just going to ask if, why don't you just ask if there are any objections to proceeding along those lines? I mean,
Okay. Are there any objections to just allowing the city commission to be the purchasing authority for urban renewal?
Well, can I,
Commissioner Crocker?
are there, what are the pros and cons to having the Urban Renewal Commission do it versus the City Commission?
Well, I think you've got one procedural issue that you would do. If you were going to purchase anything, then you would have to take action to recommend to the City Commission, then it would have to be placed on City Commission's agenda, and they would have to take that action.
A question on that, then, I mean, could basically a purchasing decision by this body be overturned by the city commission?
Well, you'd just be making a recommendation to the City Commission.
Right,
and them
so-
taking the action, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In simple terms, yes.
So then back to my question, pros and cons of Urban Renewal Commission being the entity versus,
I mean, the things to consider are, one, it would take some of the purchasing decisions and exemptions and other things that the, approvals, you wouldn't see them as much. You would focus more on the planning and other aspects instead of the purchasing. To the extent you're using urban renewal funds, you would still be authorizing the use of those urban renewal funds. It's the contracting decisions, how things are competitively bid, how, whether there's an exemption for something else, how things are purchased. The city commission would see that instead of the Urban Renewal Commission. So it would take some aspects of procedures away from you. You'd still see the authorization of urban renewal funds, but you would lose seeing how that money gets used and to a certain extent. You wouldn't see the contract. You wouldn't see where it ends up going.
so let me piggyback on that question. So in theory, could the Urban Renewal Commission vote 7-3 to make a purchase, forward it to the City Commission, and they could turn it down 3-2?
If you delegate your authority, then you wouldn't be making a 7-3 decision to purchase. But essentially, yes. If you wanted to purchase something, yeah, the city commission could turn it down and say, no, we're not going to authorize that purchase.
Commissioner Neely?
And I guess
In making a decision, I prefer the non-city Oregon City Commission members be polled to find out what their opinion
Yeah,
is.
that's what it is.
And the city manager did remind me that actually you could do some things in your delegation to control the city commission's discretion in some ways. So, they may be the ultimate purchaser, but there may be some rules.
And vice versa, if I'm understanding correctly, the discussion is that items involving purchasing would go to the city commission. You could do that, I guess, in one or two ways. It could just be put on the city commission agenda bypassing urban renewal, or depending on what the rules are established, the city commission would probably want a recommendation on that from the urban renewal, so that's where you might get your 7-3 vote that would then be overturned by a 3-2 vote. But that's really some rules that have to be set up between city commission and the urban renewal agency, exactly how that purchasing must take place. But the authority would be the city commission.
Commissioner Walters?
Well, my main concern is that I know that the criteria for making exemptions to public bidding and so forth can be pretty significant, and it just would require more responsibility from the Urban Renewal Commission members to be familiar with those laws and regulations that are with respect to the model rules or whatever rule set that we adopt. And it's just it's another level of responsibility, which I'm prepared to assume, but I think it's really important that everybody here have an understanding of what that responsibility is.
Commissioner Shaw?
What's the history of urban renewal purchasing in the past?
I don't know if I don't know.
Primarily up to this point, and not exclusively, but primarily it has been to do with purchasing a property. It's probably been the biggest things you've done. You do get into some issues that you could see, part of the development agreement with the Cove has the question still, which we haven't gotten to yet because that issue hadn't come forward, about the exemption from the competitive bidding process. But again, I will go back to those type of issues that you can become, I think, generally familiar with these issues, and you will as time goes through. You can do it laboriously and spend all the time and study that, or again, with any issue that comes before you, as it has in the past, those issues go through our legal staff. They're going to advise you on that. They'll advise you what the risks that are being taken. But as long as you're doing that in your capacity and as a urban renewal commissioner, not acting outside of the rules and regulation, that's more of a liability of the agency than it is individually of the commissioner when you begin to act outside of that authority.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you done, Commissioner
Well,
Shaw?
I was going to say that I forgot that the Urban Renewal Commission was the city commission up
Yes.
until
Sure.
we got on here. So that's where the conversation is. So.
Commissioner Noel? I'm sorry.
If I
Go
can
ahead.
make one quick clarification also, when we talk about public purchasing and the rules, real estate purchases are not covered by the public contracting model rules. Those are outside of it. So when you purchase property, you're not going through these processes. When you make public improvements, when you contract with somebody to build you a building or renovate a building, they have to go through the process. If you're buying goods, if you're buying services, you've got to go through the process. But when you're purchasing property, that's a different deal.
Commissioner Norris?
I guess since the City Commission sits as part of the Urban Renewal Commission, the discussion, I could feel very comfortable with the discussion being here, the recommendation coming forward, and the final decision being made, since it's some of the same people, so we'd have benefit of that recommendation.
The thing you might want to keep in mind is what has brought us to this point. There was considerable debate when the Urban Renewal Commission was expanded, that I think those who wanted to see more public involvement wanted that decision-making to be more than the City Commission, and now we're talking about moving back to the thing that we tried to create by moving away from the City Commission being the Urban Renewal Commission. So,
Yeah, well, I don't really care. I think it depends, for me, on the comfort level of the non-elected.
Well, can we kind of get a feel for
Yeah,
Commissioner
I think for
Crocker?
me, I would like to be a part of the official process, and if it's 7-3, I think it should be 7-3, and it shouldn't be able to be overturned by City Commission. Not that the City Commission doesn't have the best interest of the city in mind, but I think if we have public involvement on urban renewal and the urban renewal funds, I think that's who we should decide on.
Commissioner Shaw?
And I think that's why
You get the microphone there.
I think that's why a lot of us got on this commission, so that we could have some voice in how this goes. So I'm actually for with Mr. Crocker here about being involved and having that capacity to make those decisions too. So.
Commissioner Peterson, do you have a?
Yeah. As long as I'm getting the right background information to make the right decisions, then I'm comfortable making those as well.
Did you already speak?
She already kind of.
I could go either way. I do have some concerns that in the past, I don't feel that we've been provided with, as much information as I would have liked to have seen with respect to the criteria for granting exemptions from public bidding or from, I guess, perhaps, I'm thinking that at any rate this is going to apply, but BOLI wages for, if the cove development or the rivers development goes through with public funds, just ensuring that those public funding requirements are part of the ultimate agreements and decisions. So, I think we can work with staff to make sure that the information is available to people.
I actually do agree with the rest of the non-commission folks about keeping it here. I maybe the suggestion is to adopt the city commission's policies for this. If
that certainly would
apply. I mean, if we were ready to shift it over for the city commission, make the decision, I guess we were already saying we were going to accept those policies. So I don't know. How does everybody else feel about that? Do we need a motion?
What I'd suggest doing is the statutes require you to take some formal action to designate, if you're going to adopt different rules. You are the local contract review board if you don't take any further steps. Then the question becomes, what rules do you follow? And what I'd like to be able to do is maybe bring back a resolution of the board saying we adopt the city commission's procedures and make sure we get that nailed down.
And I did have somebody from the public, William Gifford, wanted to comment on this particular agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Slack. And Commissioner, my name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. I wasn't quite positive what the subject was going to be when I saw the agenda item. So let me address to what you're talking about now, as I certainly support the Urban Renewal Commission in toto having the responsibility that they signed up to do is provide citizen input to decisions regarding urban renewal. And I salute the attitudes of the publicly appointed commissioners in that regard, and certainly hope that's the result of this. The issue that I was going to speak to perhaps is more of a policy than a procedure issue, and that is that I would certainly like to see that when decisions are made to purchase property, that the commission will always get a minimum of 2 estimates, because I've seen some cases when we've only had 1 estimate for the value of a property, and I think that's totally inappropriate.
Okay.
And that's the point that I wanted to make.
Okay, thanks. Well, I guess we don't need a motion. We'll look forward to a future agenda item to look at the policy. Thank you. Moving on to item D, discuss City Hall loan.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the next 3 items you have on your agenda are all associated with the renovations, the furnishing, and the technology with the development of City Hall. And in addition, there's some additional technical costs that we still will need to put together and bring to you as we look at the phone systems and things of that nature. But the action that you're discussing here is a key component of whether we develop this facility, because without some action or some subsequent action on the City Commission in granting this loan, there's not enough money to go forth and do the renovation of the building. Now, the question comes up, and I'll run through a lot of this I know you're aware of, but why is the project important? And I think it's key that we move forth with these facilities, because in reality the city must address some of the shortcomings in facilities. It does give us the ability to increase our administrative capacity, particularly as we're looking at new demands. Also, importantly, it provides additional space immediately for our police department as they'll take over this existing facility, and that is an immediate issue. Questions also come up, is the City Hall facility, is it ideal? I can't really even allow myself to go there. If the world was full of money, which it is not, we would probably be looking at a different type of approach to address the City Hall needs. But I think with creative thinking, particularly with the Operations Center being online, eventually addressing the police facility and the library, I think this facility can serve the needs of this city for a good while into the future. It is going to require perhaps some satellite spaces for other functions, but I think it does give us the ability. And also, more importantly, it gives the city flexibility around the ballot if we ever have to use that to look at the police department or the library, because we're doing this facility within resources that are available to us. Now, how does the loan work? And this is getting specifically that loan. We're looking at, again, borrowing $2.5 million as part of the urban renewal budget. We're doing that on a interest-only loan for the first 4 years with a balloon at the end. And depending on what else you decide to fund in urban renewal, we might want to change the structure of that. There's a way to do that depending on whether we go forth with the Cove project or not. If we go forth with the Cove, we will need to do the interest-only loan and then the balloon at the end. Without the Cove, I think you've got the capacity to do that in a shorter term with more equal types of payments. There could come a time, too, as we go through, particularly if we bring the Cove on, that we'll need to look at renewing this loan at some point, and then I'll be talking to you at a later date. That's not an issue today because the Cove is still not a project that we're talking about moving forward until we get some new information there. As I said, it's 5-year loan, first 4 years interest only, roughly $38,000, with a balloon payment in the end of $2.538 million. If you don't approve the loan, again, you've already purchased the building; those costs have been incurred, but the building will remain unfurnished, and we'll need to decide what we want to do with it at that point. Because, and again, you could turn it back into some type of private development and look at selling that building, or you could. This would be much more difficult, just kind of rearrange the capital investments that are on the program for urban renewal, but really that gets into either your McLaughlin Boulevard project or the Amtrak station project, if you're going to come up with the type monies that we're talking about here to address that. The action that is needed tonight is, I'm not asking for any formal action in regards to the loan, because we need to put those paperwork together, and that'll have to be an agreement between the city and the urban renewal agency. However, if you're going to consider approval of any of the next 3 items, is you need to be committed to receiving the loan, and the City Commission needs to be committed to granting that loan. If not, there's no need to sign an award on any of these bids. So,
Any comments, questions? Commissioner Nocita, do you? Commissioner Walters?
Just curious, what's the plan if the Fleet Reserve needs those funds before the 5 years is up?
Well, we wouldn't be going to the Fleet Reserve to borrow those monies if we anticipated that those monies were going to be needed in Fleet Reserve in the next 5 years. And if we did run that, then you'd probably take money from multiple funds to do that. But given where the Fleet Reserve is, kind of what the demands are on that and what our projections are, that's what we thought would be the easiest way to take those, get those.
Commissioner Norris.
I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but I'm very high on the location of this facility. It really connects to Main Street. It will give the boost to that segment of the community that has been needed. I've long wanted the consolidation of the various departments, and this is a step along the way. And the fact that it's, again, our number one goal is to, as you see, build a sustainable future, and this will be our first LEED certified facility, one that we can be proud of. I think this is very key. Citizens all over, and I speak a lot, as you know, are so excited about finally having a facility that they can look to with pride, that really says something about our community. It's a recycled building, and I think that they really appreciate that rather than building a new one. It doesn't solve all of our problems, of course, but I'm very supportive.
Commissioner Nocita.
I used to work as for a civil engineering firm. I was a development permit planner, and I would submit development permit applications to city governments and building authorities for projects. And I agree with Mayor Norris that this is a really great place for a city hall. It would be within walking distance to my house. I think it would give a boost to the McLaughlin neighborhood. I have some questions and concerns, and it relates to some of the concerns that Rocky raised. This building's about a century old or so. It's an old building. I've seen nothing that demonstrates that as a structure, a brick building with wood frame that's very old could support what we need to do with this building. I want to ask the city manager and Mr. Archer if he's available to answer the questions regarding what review this building has or will undergone regarding its structure, whether it will need a seismic upgrade, for example. What are the laws regarding that, and what is that review process, and where are we in that process?
I can address those, Commissioner Nocita. When we purchased the building last year, as part of our due diligence process in investigating the building, deciding if it was even a facility that we could do some of the intended uses, whether at that time it was discussed for a couple of 2 or 3 different uses, including the City Hall. We had a structural engineer do a thorough investigation for the city, for the Urban Renewal Commission, and his determination was that the building was sound. The owner just previous to us actually did quite a bit of upgrade in the building, even though when you look at it, you may or may not know that from the inside, because the inside is not finished, so it may not appear that way, but it was, as I understand it, from the prior owner to the one just previous to us owning it. The most previous owner bought it with the purpose of basically renovating it, bringing it up structurally, and then turning the building over either through lease or purchase, which we ended up purchasing that. So our structural engineer did a thorough analysis before we even purchased it to make sure that it was worthy of the uses that we would do, and it was determined that it was, and it was brought up. And as I understand it, and Mr. Drentlow's here, and he might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but the renovations that would have been done just previous to us would have had to follow whatever those building codes were. So the assumption that it was brought up to code, and again, our analysis and our report, which I do have, and I'd be happy to provide that to the commission if you'd like that, the structural engineer's report. And then after the building was purchased, and in our planning processes leading up to where we're at now, moving ahead, the architects, the LRS, the architect firm that we have working on the building, has also got a structural engineer working for their firm that they do, of course, when they do any type of building projects. And that has been a part of this process as well, that the building has the structural integrity to do what we want to do there. And so I guess that's a long answer to tell you I'm confident that we are okay with what your concerns are there. And then also one more thing I just want to add, from what we have been able to identify or to tell, the building originated sometime in the 1930s, so it's not quite a century old, but then there have been phases, as you probably well know, added on up through 40, 50 years ago. And so it's
building official, Mr. Spur, what are his exact roles in approving this project, and what is the timeline on the approval of this project and analysis by our building official?
Well, it's as any building project, it has to have a building permit issued. That's actually not been issued at this point, but the review is in process. Again, we wouldn't be moving forward as where we're at if we weren't confident that we were going to be able to receive that. So that's all part of this process as well.
Yeah, I'll let you know that I invited Mr. Spurb here tonight. He said he would come. He's not here. I'm concerned as to the reason he didn't show up. Specifically, I want to follow up on my phone calls with Commissioner Smith. I read his note on this project, and I called him to try to get some details from him 4F, I have heard several comments from citizens regarding concerns over the structural integrity of the new City Hall building. I don't know the validity of those claims. However, if there are issues that have not been addressed, those very issues may come back to bite us in the form of thousands of dollars in change orders if we have not addressed them before awarding the bid on this project. I called Rocky up because I wanted to get some more detail from him on the origin of these concerns. This is all secondhand to me. He indicated something about an upcoming review meeting where this would be the structural issues of this building are going to be considered. I would be very concerned about, because part of the package of decision making on this tonight is a contract for this. I guess I didn't get an answer as to whether this building would need a seismic upgrade. If somewhere down the line this building did need a seismic upgrade, for example, that would be a heck of a change order, and I want to suggest that we continue this item until the next Urban Renewal Commission meeting, until we've clarified, and Commissioner Smith is back here to, like I said, these are his conversations with citizens. I want to hear from Mr. Spurb also.
Commissioner West?
I know Scott and I are struggling here to who's going to say the things first. What I was going to say, Commissioner Nocita, to that was at one time we were looking at it for a library where it did not structurally hold up as a library. So that's probably where all the rumors came from, but it served adequately with our structural engineers as a city hall. And it was very interesting, I bet, for all of us to learn how heavy books were. We just had no idea. And you'd think bodies, but I guess a lot of, so
that was
maybe
just,
he wants to follow up on that. But that's where I think a lot of those rumors came from.
that was just on the second story of the building on the book load, because the first story, the majority of that, except the part over the existing old house, is on a slab on grade. So it's extremely sturdy. To directly answer your question, Commissioner, I didn't realize that I'd missed that part of the question. The answer is no, it does not need a seismic upgrade. We have, again, our architects have been working on this for us for a number of months. I've had a number of conversations with Mr. Spurb. We wouldn't be at the point we're at if we didn't have confidence moving forward. And then in reference to, I can't address the other concerns of Commissioner Smith because I don't know from whom he's heard those issues from, and I don't know what that means exactly, but the upcoming meeting that we have as far as review for the building has to do with the land use application. Because we're making some parking lot changes, it required us to go through a site plan change, as well as there's an enclosure for our generator and our trash outside that exceeded 200 square feet, so it triggered a land use review. We do have a meeting coming up for that with the planning folks, not with the building department. So I don't know of any concerns about the structural integrity of that building. I'm confident that we don't have to do any further seismic upgrading. That's with the knowledge that I have.
Last meeting, we voted on our urban renewal budget, and I had a negative vote on that because we were going to be borrowing money from the city, and I kind of have to address that here, knowing that I now know where the money's going to be coming from this fleet, so I'm a little more comfortable with that now. In order to get a building permit or a final occupancy, this building does have to meet all the criteria, and if a seismic upgrade is needed, it's going to be there. So, and I was kind of surprised that they didn't need to have them, but that's up to the engineers. And lastly, I remember the engineer's report that was done on the first inspection. And I was pretty dissatisfied with that the contractor that did the work in there, and I was happy to see that he's not one of the people there that's going to be doing this work here. So and I'm hoping that those issues were addressed, a couple of which were ceiling joists that didn't meet the walls and some columns that were offset of the footings. So I'm hoping all of those have been addressed.
Jim, would you like me to respond to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Those have been. Are you, Commissioner, just to clarify, are you talking about the initial report that we received from the engineer?
The first engineering study was done.
Okay, when that was done, there were a list of, again, that was our due diligence to purchase the
Correct.
building. There were a list of concerns. We brought those back to the previous owner that we were negotiating with and said, we need you to fix these.
Yes.
And they did.
Good.
And those were reviewed again by our structural engineer to know that they had satisfactorily completed those. And I would just one other thing I would add again, the item that you'll be considering to award the City Hall contract bid. If you were to approve that, you would approve the bid award and the contract for construction. That contractor would not be able to do any of the work until they had satisfied all the building requirements, and that permit has to be taken out. So even if there were concerns that there were some other things that needed to be done, that contractor couldn't move forward until they had satisfied those issues. And any other necessary upgrades to current building codes have been included in the bid that we've already let and that we will be presenting to you in just a little bit.
Commissioner Neely, I think, was next.
I got a question about the loan amount itself, but there's still some issues about the construction. Maybe I'll go ahead with it. But were there still some people that were concerned about the integrity?
Well, Commissioner Crocker had it.
It's about the loan.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused because I look at F, G, and H, and F has $1,184,000, G has $249,000. H, the green sheet doesn't give an amount. I think that was probably an oversight, but in the attachment there, I saw an amount of $45,000. That adds up roughly to $1.5 million. So I'm going to ask you why we're making a request for $2.5 million. Either that or I'm missing some numbers.
2.8.
Well, the
2.5.
No, one of the things that has taken place is our bids have come in more favorable. We think that we probably won't have to borrow all the 2.5. We're going to borrow what it costs to do it, but that's kind of the maximum we think we'll need. Hopefully, by the time it's done, there are some other costs too, as I mentioned. We're going to have to come back and talk with you about. So, but again, we're not going to. If the total cost was all said and done is $2.1 million, that's the amount we'll borrow. If it's 2.5, we'll go up to 2.5.
The total's still less than 1.5, and I don't know why, if you want that fudge factor in there, to call it $2 million loan, and you can come back to us if you have to, but that's a $1 million difference. And that's
Well,
a
I
little hard for
think,
me
is
to
it a moot point because we're not being asked to approve the 2.5? That's just information tonight.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we're going to come back with a final number for whatever
And
it is. This
you'll
is my
have the
understanding
paperwork,
of it.
we'll have to do that.
Okay.
And again, we were kind of estimating that when we put the budget together because we did not have the bids all at that time was doing it. So
Yeah.
again, whatever this thing costs is the amount we're going to
Commissioner
borrow.
Crocker.
Well, it seems to me that we've already started down this path. We bought the building with the intention of either a library or a city hall, and we determined that it has to be a city hall, or I should say it's not suitable for a library. It seems like if we were not to not approve this motion, our options are that we then try and resell it, I guess, or we try and act as a property management organization and lease it, or we'd be in quite a pickle, basically, if we decide not to move forward with this. If there's serious reasons why we shouldn't, then that's fine. But it seems to me we've already started down this path, and if we were to not approve this, it'd be like stopping midstream, in which case we'd be in a probably world of hurt. I agree with Rocky and with I think Jim, Commissioner Nocita has said this in the past that I'm not a huge fan of spending urban renewal funds on properties that aren't going to generate tax increment. That said, this will bring a lot of activity to the area, and activity breeds more activity and breeds better marketability, which breeds increased property values. And I think generally, this is a good expenditure of urban renewal funds. So, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion to.
We don't need a motion.
No motion is needed?
Well, I think we have to have our
We need
agenda
to
items here
yeah.
very clearly spelled out, because every one of these say motion, recommended
I
action.
know.
It's the format.
It's the form that I
Yeah.
think is misleading.
So we're just talking about it right now.
Where it says recommended action in parentheses could be a motion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, I think, is a way.
Say or motion.
So are we just going to, can we talk about the contracts then? Or-
Well, I mean, I think what Mr. Patterson's looking for is kind of, are we all on the same page? Because if we're not really on the same page of moving forward with this use for this building, then there's no use of dealing with the additional agenda items.
If either
So-
party, either the City Commission or Urban Renewal Commission, is not in agreement of taking a loan from the city, either granting it and receiving it, is you shouldn't approve the other items, because we'll be letting those contracts and you will not have the money to cover those. So, if there's debate, particularly in terms of majority of either one of those groups, you probably need to let each other know that. You don't need a motion on that regard, because that's going to take a formal action to do that. But you'll put yourself in an interesting pickle if you approve those.
Commissioner Nocita.
I'm curious as to if this is all going to come from the fleet reserve, which is part of the city budget. Why is the Urban Renewal doing this? Why is the Urban Renewal Commission asking for a loan? Why doesn't the city just do it with its own money? It seems like, we're moving funds around.
Well, I think
I'd like-
eventually Urban Renewal will actually, with Urban Renewal funds in the future, will pay for the building and the upgrades until we either change our budgeting around as far as what projects we're going to do, or until we get some of that increment that we've been talking about from some of the bigger projects to fund this. The interim measure is to borrow the money from the city coffers and then to repay that with urban renewal funds. I mean, ultimately, it's intended to be urban renewal. So.
It's an interesting question that, and there's 2 or 3 different ways you could handle this, and one is kind of a future issue that you may wish to address. You could take the dollars out of fleet reserve and do this. I don't know how you'd repay those at that point. With this program, you borrow those monies, and urban renewal will repay those monies, so fleet reserve remains whole. The other way, you take the 2.5 out of fleet reserve, and you'd just spend $2.5 million. Now, could we do that? Could do it. It has some implications for the fleet as we go through time in doing that. One of the interesting issues, which is a philosophical issue, and we have chatted about this internally, and if the city budget was stronger, as you would see us talking about this, but I think we want to get ourselves into a position where eventually you would charge internally your departments rent space that would go into a building fund. And in that way, you could build a case that maybe the city, over time, should repay the urban renewal agency. Of course, by the time we've probably got that done, the agency will be out of business, and all that stuff becomes the city as well.
Are you counting on that, or?
It may be something that we should look at, but I do think creating that building-type fund does a couple things. It gives you the ability, as you go through time, to maintain facilities, and also if you need to build or expand facilities, it gives you a budget which to do that, and you don't have to go ask the voters every time that you need facility upgrades for some type of bond measure.
It actually gives an accurate picture of what the real budget numbers are as well, because
It shows you true cost.
when
of
you're not
operating.
showing any space cost,
Yeah.
that's really not reality in most instances.
And we would have already been there if we hadn't been through the budget crisis we've been, but there just was no room to do that without cutting programs to get there, so that's why we haven't done it.
We got any other comments or questions?
I have one before we move on.
Commissioner Norris.
Yes, I would just like to address something that Commissioner Nocita said. He mentioned that he had requested that a staff member come to the commission meeting this evening, and I just want to say that we do not have the authority to do that. The only staff person we have the authority to request to be here is Mr. Patterson, and that's not our rule, and that's not our responsibility.
We have the right to have questions answered, and if I don't see any problem with inviting people to the commission who can answer our questions.
Except that those people work for Mr. Patterson.
They all work for...
If there's a question that the commission needs answered, they should direct that question to me, and if I have to have staff to answer it, I will bring those to the meeting.
Did you direct Mr. Spurb not to come tonight?
I did. Because that request should have come through my office. It is not the prerogative of Urban Renewal Commissioner or City Commissioner to direct staff in any fashion.
Okay. I would like to
In
make a
fact, that
motion.
is a charter violation.
I would like to make a motion then. I would like to make a motion on the new reordered agenda, items 4D, 4E, 4F, that we continue all 4 of those items till the next Urban Renewal Commission meeting, and in the interim, direct City Manager Patterson to invite Mr. Spurb to answer questions of the Urban Renewal Commission at the next Urban Renewal Commission meeting.
I don't think you're going to get a second. Let me make a comment. I think at any time I've made a request that I thought a staff member should be there, I've made the request either through the city manager or put a memo to the person in question with a copy to the city manager. That really is the appropriate protocol. And we have run into situations with past commissions, past mayors incidentally, where in fact the system was shortcut, where commissioners were going directly to staff people, and it really was a disaster. It doesn't work. It created certain tensions among staff members for the simple reason there wasn't necessarily an agreement from among the staff and what it was, what should be done, and the city manager is, of course, the individual that deals with those particular issues. I feel comfortable that if there are certain issues that are coming forward that there's pertinent disagreement among the staff, that the manager will indicate to us what those particular issues are, and at that particular time, I think we could fairly make a request that we could hear from the staff in question. But the city commission calls itself the city commission because of historical reasons, I'm sure. Our city commission does not function that way. It is actually a council. We hire a city manager to do that work for us. We have no administrative authority. The authority we have is to essentially fire the city manager. I think there are a couple other people we could fire too because we hired them. But the city manager is one of the few that we do. And I think it is an appropriate protocol. And really, if you felt he was here, the basic courtesy that you need to give to the city manager is to
Ask.
Either ask or indicate at the time you're making the request that the city manager hears that request too. I don't know that you did. Yeah, I think it's just plain rude.
I actually got the information through Dan Drentlaw, who's actually the director of that department.
Another point I think that should be made is when we go directly to staff, the city commissioner has the big picture. Sometimes staff members are working on...
City manager.
The city manager. Sometimes staff people are working on their own focused part of whatever the thing is, and if you bypass the city manager, it's not fair sometimes to that staff member to put them on the spot. So, anyway. Do we need to... We don't have a it dies for a second, the motion.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do anything else? We can move forward with...
move forward.
Next.
Yep. Just keeping that one caveat in mind there.
We're on 4D? No, 4E. 4E.
We on F.
Mr.
It says 4F, but it's...
Or F?
No, 4E. We're on 4E.
4E.
Yeah, new 4E.
It says 4F at the top.
Well, it got changed.
Yes.
So 4F is 4E, and we're on the current
Yes.
4E, which is the former 4F.
It took me an hour to rewrite all of my different things.
I know, I did that too. And then I rearranged everything.
It's the new 4E.
Okay. I'll be
Okay.
giving you the report on this, Commission. So this is just to be clear, that this is the item having to do with the approval of the new City Hall construction contract. And the recommendation is that that the Urban Renewal Commission would approve the bid award and the construction contract to Team Construction LLC in the amount of $1,183,950 for the new City Hall project. I don't think I need to do the background and the introduction on this as much, but just to let you know that leading up to this process, we've done all the design and the various discussions and planning and all the different actions that have taken place. The final construction drawings and specifications were prepared, and the project was bid beginning May 11th. Following our bid process, we opened the bids on June 3rd, and we received a total of 19 bids, which, by the way, is a very high number of bids to receive. I think that's a pretty good indication of what's going on in the construction contract industry right now, unfortunately. What that probably did lead to is a pretty competitive process for us, and I think some pretty good pencil sharpening by the contractors, because they all knew that there was a lot of interest in this project from our pre-bid meetings. Of the 19 bids, the low bid was submitted by Team Construction in the amount that I've already indicated. We have gone through the normal process of evaluating that low bid to make sure that it was responsive and responsible, which is basically to say that they completed everything accurately and correctly, and that we checked their references, which all came back very good. And our, as another note, our architects and our project manager, so basically our project management team, are all quite familiar with this contractor. They have had nothing but good things to say, so feel good about that. This low bid is below our engineer's estimate by anywhere from about $100,000 to $300,000, depending on how you look at that. The complete listing of the bidders and the bid amounts were listed on a separate tabulation sheet that was in the very back of your agenda materials. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. This construction contract includes interior improvements, parking lot improvements, and some landscaping. Not included, and we'll be talking about those in some follow-up actions, 2 of those tonight, and then another one at a later date. Not included are the furnishings. We'll be talking about a separate process that we did to ask you for an award of a furnishings contract, and some audio-video AV-type components. One of those is our Granicus system that we use for all of the things that take place in the commission chambers. That Nancy Idle talked to you about that. And then on another contract that we're working on right now, some additional audio-video stuff that will be coming forward. So at any rate, that just wanted to point out that those are not included in this and will be taken up under some separate contracts. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but again, that is our recommendation, is to award the bid and the contract
Commissioner
to Team
Crocker.
Construction.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Crocker.
Well, I'm glad to hear you did get references, because I know sometimes low bids can bite you in the butt on the back end in regards to change orders and so on and so forth. So I imagine you talked to references that said that they didn't have excessive change orders and so on and so forth.
Those types of things are standard questions that we ask, and yeah, they again, from all the information that I have available, the research that we did and the knowledge that we have, they appear to be a very reputable company.
Commissioner,
I have one other question, sorry. In the bids, I'm sure you spelled this out, and I'm sure I haven't read the bid application, but do any of these bids, or do they all have a line item for contingencies? I mean, do they plan for changes to happen? Or did some of them plan for changes to happen and others didn't, where maybe it may have skewed the numbers?
It's simply a lump sum total bid. So that's up to the contractor themselves. However, what I can tell you is that in our total budget, that we were just talking about the budget a little bit ago, and part of I think what Commissioner Neely's concerns were that you were asking about in terms of why we're asking you to consider a loan of up to a certain amount is because we've budgeted for all these items, but we have actually budgeted I believe it's, I'm going to have to double check this, but I believe we've budgeted about 15% in contingency for this whole entire project, not just the construction contract, but for the total project to get this done. So we've covered some of that in case there were any major issues that come up that we didn't anticipate. We don't expect that, but you never know. But again, with the contractor, it's totally up to them. But it's very specific in terms of the contract specifications and what we're looking for. There should be no question about what we were asking them to do. And we had 2 pre-bid meetings where we discussed things, and they had every opportunity to discover what was there. So we'll hold them to that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Commissioner West.
And then all this construction is being done to a LEED standard, correct? So your architect and the LRS and team, they're all building to a what, LEED,
That's correct.
EB, or?
Yeah, something within
So-
existing building. I'm sorry, I forget what that's called at the moment, and I don't remember the level of lead that we're going for. But there's a connection to the lead connection. There is that it involves the design and all the materials and various things that all were incorporated into the bid document that we're asking to approve.
Thank you.
Commissioner Neely.
I'd like to go ahead and put forward the motion, and we have discussion after the motion to approve the bid award and to have a contract agreement to Team Construction for amount of $1,183,950.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second with discussion. Seeing no hands raised, are we ready to call the roll?
Commissioner Nasita?
No.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. So that would be 8-1 in favor of the motion. Motion passes. We go on to item F, 4F.
I'll be giving you this information again, Chair Slack and Commission. This is the second of 3 items here consecutively that have to do with the improvements, and this is the recommendation to approve a purchase agreement with Pacific Office Furnishings in the amount of $248,991.38. This is for the purchase and installation of our interior furnishings associated with the project. With the approval of the bid award and construction for the City Hall improvements that we just discussed, those, as I said, did not include the furnishings. These are the furnishings for the facility, and they were anticipated as one of the components of our overall project and our project budget. Through the process of researching how to buy the furniture and what the best route to go there was, we have selected and are recommending this contract with Pacific Office Furnishings, and these are Herman Miller product furnishings, and we're recommending this via some cooperative pricing agreements that are already in place that give us some significant cost savings and benefits by basically piggybacking on agreements that have already been done by other public agencies, including the 2 here are, one is the state cooperative purchasing, State of Oregon price agreement, and a Clackamas County agreement that was done in a separate RFP process. So those, again, this requires your understanding that we're approving this contract without us having done the competitive bidding, but that they've been done through a couple of other agencies previously. Mr. Kabaisman has reviewed this contract. In fact, he helped write the contract and has reviewed the 2 purchasing agreements and has recommended that I can proceed with giving this information to you and recommend your approval of that contract. So, again, I'd be happy to answer any further questions about that.
Commissioner West.
I'm assuming that all this is done ergonomically correct for for the employees, but I'm just hoping that when you do the commission chairs, that you get something with a little lumbar back support and upgrade our workstations. Complaining about.
You got free dinner. What else are you complaining about?
That's what I'm complaining. No, I'm
I hope that
I'm
you
hoping
will-
that they choose the chairs for?
We have, we've considered those things, and we hope that you'll like what's been selected.
Commissioner Neely, you had your hand up.
I did, but I wanted to say that
I'm getting old.
The commissioner from North Dakota surely must have had a plush lifestyle. That was so picky. I thought those were rugged people. They could sit on.
We need to.
No, just old, weak backs from all that hard work.
I did have a question.
You know, the mayor's going to be on our case in a minute here.
No, she has no authority here. Anyway.
Did you put that in the record?
I wanted to make clear
Tonight.
these price agreements. These are price agreements that are associated with this particular entity that we're doing. So
Correct.
They've had the experience. They know what the good prices are, and based on those prices, both the county and state purchasing entities there have gone with this, and we're dealing with the same prices they have, which I presume is a lot easier.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay.
Commissioner Crocker.
The business person in me who's furnished my own office struggles. I'll be honest, $75 for task lights. And I don't want to go through and pick this apart line item. I really don't. But were these price agreements made at the peak of when the economy was good and people were willing to pay whatever? Or are these price agreements something that, I mean, I guarantee you, I'll bet my June salary that Pacific Office Furnishings isn't doing this kind of a contract a lot right now. And I really don't want to stop the process, but gosh, I bet we could go back and say this isn't good enough, and I bet we could get something better. I really do. Task light, $75. I mean, I bought all our Aeron chairs. They're $700 Aeron chairs. I got them for $300. They're slightly used from a business, a bank that went out of business. Have we looked at used, or slightly used, or lightly used?
We didn't.
Like I said, I really don't want to drag this process to a halt, but if we can save $150,000, that's $150,000 more we can spend on storefront improvements.
That's just less money we'll borrow.
Or, okay, well, it's less money that we're borrowing, but that's taxpayer money.
Right, you're right.
And like I said, if the rest of the commission doesn't feel this way and they just want to move forward, I'm okay with that, but I just, as a business owner who has to pay for my own stuff, and I will look at the bottom line. I just glanced at some of these things, and I had to cringe a little bit.
I did walk by. I was over to the AAA building in Clackamas yesterday, seeing an attorney there, and twice I've walked by there, and there's like brand new furniture in an empty office, just wall to wall in there. It would be hard for me to believe. I don't know how difficult it would be. That's, we're on a time thing, but I got to believe that there's some decent stuff out there at bargain basement prices right now. So, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Mr. Crocker here. I'm not comfortable with just one source here. I was comfortable with the first one with 19 bids, but having one source here is I don't think that's as transparent as our citizens would like us to be here. So,
well, you don't know how many sources bid on that project, though. That's
it. See, I'm just a little curious about this whole thing because I kind of went through those things myself, and I wish we had something to kind of compare it, even though it does say it in here, Clackamas County and state order and price agreement stuff. I'm just not that comfortable with that. So,
if I could just comment
Sure.
to that, I guess a couple of things. And as far as the way that the purchasing and procurement stuff works, and Mr. Gebeisman might be able to help me out on that a little bit with some of the way that works with the cooperative agreements. But first, I think what you have to understand, I do understand what you're saying, Commissioner Crocker, that maybe there are other things that we could look at, but a couple of things on that. One, we're basically building, what's going to be a brand new city hall. We wanted to start with everything being new and go, forward from that direction. One of the things that we had to do is that our when we went through the process of selecting this furniture vendor, we know that through these cooperative agreements, there's been some level of public bidding has already occurred through both of these agreements. That's why we've separated it out, because one agreement gave us better prices on some of the equipment, and the other one gave us better prices on that equipment. And each of those agreements separately had some level of where they went through that each any potential vendor could have bid on, and we know that we're receiving the best prices that were available. I think that's basically how that process works.
Yes, we're only allowed to piggyback or go through a cooperative procurement if the competitive bidding process has been met. I didn't go back and look at what the state got, how many different vendors got that, but they tend to get a lot of people interested because the volumes that they get out of the state are pretty good, and it cuts down on the process, and so there likely were significant numbers. We don't have those prices in front of us, but both the state and the county did.
And I guess the second point was that there's a working relationship between the furniture vendor and the architects and the designers of our facility, in that anticipating this vendor, we've had them custom design all of the furnishings to each of the office spaces or to each of the conference room or the work areas, whatever. So they're the specific items that we're looking at. Chairs, a chair, you can probably debate that or whatever, but I'm talking about like your desk work, your workstations, and those types of things have been designed specifically for the building layout itself. So there's kind of that whole working relationship.
Commissioner Walters.
Yeah, I do have a lot of experience with, particularly with this state contract. I work for the Multnomah County, and we use the contract a lot. We probably buy $2 million worth of furnishings almost every year. So when you look at TaskLight, it's a little deceptive. These workstations actually have these pretty significant lights that are attached under the bookshelf areas, and they're pretty significant units. They're very durable. I know these workstations are typically good for 30, 40 years. They're very durable. They're configurable. You can do all kinds of things with them. The nice thing about buying this system is that you alleviate the problem of having to cobble together a lot of views. I think it's advisable to use as much as possible of what you have if it fits, but I also understand the problems that you can have by trying to mix and match a lot of furniture, particularly when you're looking at having to accommodate people of different sizes and needs. I think having a system like this gives you a lot of flexibility and also configurability. I think it's a good system. A lot of it's been around forever, and I think it's got a lot of longevity. I think it's a good investment for the city.
Commissioner Crocker.
Let me I didn't say this, but I think the new city hall should have nice stuff. Don't get me wrong. All right. A lot of my desks are made out of galvanized pipe and door slabs, and they look great, but they fit for what we do. That said, in this economic environment, I don't think, what can it hurt to go back and just say, look, the Urban Renewal Commission says this isn't good enough. Just lay it right there and just wait for them to respond. And if they say, tough, this is the contract price and that's what you get, well, then that's fine. But if they can sharpen their pencil a little bit and say, you know what, we don't have any of these kind of big contracts coming up with Multnomah County or anybody, and maybe we could sharpen our pencil a little bit. I don't know what harm that would do. Can we do that, or is that illegal, or what?
This is where you get into the competitive process. We're able to go through a much smoother. You don't have to go out to competitive bid because you're relying on what the state and the county did. If we were to go back and say this isn't good enough, give us something different, we're moving away from what the state and county did, and the office furnishings next door goes, hey, we can sharpen our pencils and come up with something better as well. And so if you're going to move away from that, you're going to have to go through a competitive bidding process entirely to open it up to everybody, and maybe that's where the commission wants to go. But you can't rely on the state and county contracts and say, plus give us more.
Okay,
Yeah.
so to piggyback on that, is it that time intensive? I honestly don't know. To put this spreadsheet together and send it to 10 different vendors and say we're looking for competitive bids, give us your best shot. I mean, because it's everything's outlined right here, right, as to what we're getting.
Whatever the commission directs or recommends, obviously we'll carry that order, that direction out. The only thing I would just say is a couple of things that the concerns would be from staff is that one, you've got a time issue and things are moving on a planned timeline with all the coordination that has to occur with the contract and then like I said, the design of the furniture, fitting and so forth. This furniture is not setting on a shelf. It's for this large a quantity and for those special, for all the workstations for each component that we have to do, the order has to be placed several months in advance. And so we're moving on the timeline that was anticipated, knowing that we would have that lead time. I'm not saying that we couldn't make this work, but the timeline would be difficult. And then secondly, there is some additional cost. Is the cost savings great enough that if we go out and redo this process, because we're going to engage the services of our project management team and staff time, and there are additional costs in doing that. So I don't know what those costs would be, but
And I appreciate that. And so I guess the question is then, at what point do we say it is worth it? If we save $25,000, is it worth it? If we save $50,000, is it worth it? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know. I'm sure that the furniture market is significantly different now than it was 6 months ago, even. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, and if the rest of the commission disagrees with me, that I'm
Commissioner Neely.
I'm going to suggest to hold this over and for Mr. Archer and our city manager to sit down with particularly the three of you because of your experience you've had, Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Crocker, Chair Slack, and talk about this particular issue. I don't imagine it's going to kill us to hold it over to the next meeting and make a decision at that time.
Commissioner West.
I'm sorry, and what are we going to accomplish between this meeting and the next one? I lost you, Doug. What do you?
They're going to have a discussion about this. I mean, these are people that have been involved in purchasing equipment. You and I have not, and we don't have that kind of experience.
Well, so the chair and the vice chair and staff are going to talk about another
The
arrangement?
three people have been expressing their concerns about the issue are all people that have been involved in this kind of activity. I have not.
So is
I
Commissioner
don't.
Walters.
And we, yes, excuse me, you can be included as well. I'm sorry. But at least the three city commissioners that are here, and mayor, I don't know, have had that much experience. I would prefer this. Rather than have a protracted discussion here, I think.
Just for reference, the Multnomah County estimates that each procurement it runs anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in costs.
Commissioner West.
Well, I just wanted to say what I was hearing, that I'm not sure if the point was taken, is that this furniture has been picked because it's been worked with an architect to configure all this building is going to be arranged. And so you said you got to go back to staff. Well, you have to add the architect in there too, because I don't know what you're thinking. Office Depot, Office Max, those kinds of places aren't going to have the staffing to put together these kinds of office systems as a custom. So,
Commissioner Nacita, did you have your? I thought you had your hand up. No, you didn't. Okay, Commissioner Crocker.
Okay, knowing that if you go back and say this isn't good enough, if that triggers us that we have to go through a big, long, drawn-out process, maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, but could we at least go back and say, listen, the Urban Renewal Commission would really like to see you work on this delivery and installation?
Well, I think that sounds like it's a problem with the process.
It's all negotiated as part of the contract.
All right, well,
I think what we can do is I think Commissioner Neely's suggestion is good. I think we probably want to bring in the consultant too, so you can hear. I mean, we've actually gone through and looked at each piece of furniture in each room in doing this. So it's been a very comprehensive process, but if you want to have that discussion, I think that's good. If at the end of that discussion we decide that this is not where we want to go, I think the appropriate action would be then to go back through some type of competitive bidding process that we would have to put together. That is labor intensive.
well, and I want to make it clear too that obviously, we're not privy to know that you guys went through every single room and configured, and that was a time laborious process. And I'm sure you guys cringe when I say, I think we can do better, because maybe you know in your heart that you can't, and I'm just full of hot air. But I just need to raise these concerns, especially having purchased furniture before. I mean, this just it floors me, and I know it's different for public entities, and so if everybody else is comfortable with this number, I'll go along. But as long as my
Okay. Well, if let's hold it over and have a meeting and see what we can come back with and
Sure.
and
The
get as
four
many
that I
people.
mentioned, I don't feel I have any expertise to bring to such a meeting. And I
So
don't.
you're talking about Shaw, Crocker, Slack, and Walters?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can we move on to item G?
Do we need a vote? Do we need a motion to do that?
I suppose there was an action item and perhaps a motion to table to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All ayes. We'll hold off to the next meeting. G.
And I'm going to call on this side and talk to you about it.
Okay, good evening. Before you is a proposed sole source contract with Granicus Incorporated for various electronic processes that are related to the new chambers at the new City Hall. And this contract is in the amount of $45,144. In keeping with the City Commission's sustainable goal, the city has been moving progressively forward toward the paperless agenda packets. And this contract tonight is the second of 3 phases toward that end. And upon approval and installation of this contract, the city would be on its way to saving about 95,000 copies a year, plus all of the work involved with all of that. The third phase is optional, and it would implement the electronic voting and public display modules. And this would further streamline the record keeping and increase the accuracy of the recording of the votes as well. As your report indicates, the contract will provide individual touchscreen monitors for up to 10 commission members, plus the ones that we need for the control. It will provide a speaking order system to help keep meetings running smoothly, and an electronic timing device, as well as the integration of all of those processes. So the sole source is being sought pursuant to an Oregon statute that allows it, and that's based on the written findings that you should have there at your seat. I believe it's at the bottom of page 1. Oops, and I gave him my only copy. At the bottom of page 1, that and where it says that the findings focus on Section 2A above, that the efficient utilization of the existing goods requires the acquisition of compatible goods or services. So the state statute is actually saying, because we already have a system in place that requires a similar type of technology, that it's a permissible use. So that's where we're coming from on that. I'm here to answer any further questions if you would like, and Bill Kabizman can address any of the other legal aspects if you have questions on that.
Mr. Crocker.
First of all, I think the service and the technology is fantastic. I think it's awesome.
Oh, yeah, he wants to be doing our
But
radio projections.
no, I don't. I really don't. Unfortunately, this comes down to an area of that I have some knowledge, and bids are a pain. I don't put detail on my bids because I don't like people doing this. But I'll tell you, I Googled one of these things, this ELO Touch Monitor 1750L. They're charging us $850 a monitor. The list price is $635. The highest price I could find it available for is $567. So we're paying a a premium of 50% on these, and I don't know. Maybe there's something special about them. I guess I shouldn't jump to conclusions. Is there some special stuff that we have to pay a little bit extra for some of this hardware on this stuff? Do we know?
The monitors are, they're related to the Granicus whole process.
Mhm.
And as far as the integration of putting all of those together, working with our current system, the information that comes out of all of that equipment goes into the Granicus system. And I mean, it's like a, I guess you could kind of look to it as trying to use a Windows application on a Mac computer.
Right.
I mean, it's just it just doesn't work very well. And so there are certain monitors and certain, Granicus has it's not an actual computer that you would have at your seat, but it's a computer-like device that integrates all of the information up there and then sends it into the Granicus system electronically.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, no, I
any
understand
more
that. I
than
guess what I'm saying is that for the exact spec ELO Touch Monitor 1715L, they're charging us $850 each, and for that exact same monitor, the highest price I could find was $567. So I wonder.
That's why the integration, they're purchasing it and bringing it to us, and then installing it and
Well, I understand
integrating
that,
it with
and
all.
they're,
That's all.
they're
part of
charging
the-
us for the installation and configuration in addition to that, which is fine. I have no problem with that. I'm just curious as to why we're paying higher, significantly higher than even list price. And is that something that we can go back and say, hey guys, we know that we're going to use you because we already have your solution, but you shouldn't be charging us more than list price for things.
We can go back and get an explanation on this.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about competitive bidding.
Because it was done with sole source, we can go back and negotiate. In fact, the statute requires us to negotiate.
All right.
Can we just move on then, and
Yep. We'll bring it back as well.
Along with the furniture for the next.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We're pushing the clock, but I did, we do have the Main Street manager, Lloyd Purdy, here on the topic, and he's been here since the beginning and actually was on some well-deserved days off and came in tonight, so I was wondering if we could at least put his agenda item out before we leave. Can we do that, Mayor?
Chair Slide.
Sure, go ahead.
The issue I see with that is it appears that there's some linkage between the discussion of the procedures and the awarding of this money to Main Street, Oregon City. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, this seems to be a application to the storefront improvement program. And the prior item relates to the storefront improvement program application process and requirements. And it seems that the outcome of the discussion on that might have a bearing on the next item.
Okay, that is true. One thing we do have is we have some money that came from the state that we're trying to spread as far as we can, and if that money's not spent by the end of this year, that is a project in itself, then we'll have to give that
The
money
end of the
back.
fiscal year or the calendar?
December, calendar year.
Okay.
So
it's not urgent this evening.
Well, the process is a long process to go through advertising to all of the businesses, getting them to make applications, approving the applications, and having the signs installed. So, Ms. Crushauer, did you have some comments?
No, I did want to remind you that we continued the discussion about the criteria from the last meeting, and you did award some grants at the last meeting. So the only thing that would be slightly different about this is using your discretion to award a $13,000 grant instead of a $10,000 max, which the existing process, which was adopted by the Urban Renewal Commission, does give you that discretion. Otherwise, though, these markers seem to be in fitting with the storefront grant application program.
Commissioner Neely.
I'm a little confused. I thought the 3,000, additional 3,000 was distinct.
They're asking for $13,000.
Well, 13,000 to be, there's going to be multiple, there will be multiple applicants. And so
Yes,
there will be
right.
money that'll come from the state funds of 13,000 and funds that will become, would you like to speak to this, Lloyd, since you're here? Well, at least we need to get past this point. Commissioner
Right,
Norris?
I guess we need to
We're
decide
very-
whether or not we're going to.
Yeah, we're very rushed. I understand the time sensitivity of this. Is it possible to hold it over and move it up then on the agenda? Because that's not, I don't think we can give it fair weight and get our questions
Are
answered.
we okay?
If we're okay with that.
We can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Let's make sure it goes at the beginning of the
Yes,
agenda.
yes,
Since this
right,
was
that's
about
what-
the only one, we had people from the outside wanting
Yeah.
to speak.
Yes.
Right.
Gosh.
Well, the application process plus the grant application.
Well, the guidelines, and
Right.
Mr. Patterson, do we need to, well, we took the one thing that looked like it was important off the agenda. Is there anything else that we need to cover that needs to be covered tonight?
I think we're fine for this evening. We can
Okay.
bring it back.
Mr. Nacita.
I'd like to make a
Nacita.
closing comment before we leave. Tonight is the night that I came to really, really unquestioningly and wholeheartedly appreciate our citizen members. The level of expertise that all of them have added to the discussion tonight on purchasing procedures, contracting procedures, buying stuff, has just elevated the discussion on this commission tremendously. And it's, I think Commissioner Neely put it well, this is not something that all of us elected city commissioners are very versed in. And to have these scrutinizing eyes and minds of expertise in this stuff has, it never really hit me until tonight. And I just want to express my appreciation to all of you on that.
Thank you. Anything? Or we're adjourned.